Do you believe that the world's problems can ultimately be solved by the power of music and love? Well, do we have the class for you today? Hi, I'm Luke the DM, and I am joined here tonight by Jay Milio, our lore master, and special guest Inpurrgalatic. And today on TACtorials, we are talking about the Bard class. So you want to play a Bard. In this video, we're going to go over the fundamental basics of creating a Bard and what it means to play a Bard in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. But I would like to just remind everybody that this video is not meant to be a substitution for doing your homework and reading the player's handbook. If you want the ultimate guide of creating a Bard and customizing your Bard, the player's handbook is important to read. But we're going to walk through this Bard class. And first of all, what is a Bard? Bards are ultimately a full spellcasting, charisma-based class that thrives on being a team player and supporting their allies. Bards gain their power through the arts, whether it be music or dance or poetry or storytelling. Bards really thrive being the face of the party, having that silver tongue, and using magic to get themselves out of sticky situations. Bard is my personal favorite class in D&D 5e. My favorite turn of phrase is that no situation is not made better by having a Bard present. As we'll talk about, they end up kind of feeling like the jack of all trades and master of none. But again, they're all about while the flavor will make you feel like the superstar and the main character syndrome, they really function as great sidekicks. Again, helping your friends be excellent at what they already are excellent as, and just by all around boosting that party. So we're gonna go through the fundamental basics of bards, and then Per plays Ciarenne, who is our current top level bard in the Tealeaf Adventuring Company. And we're going to talk about some tips and tricks, magic items, and spells. But first and foremost, let's talk about proficiencies. So bards get a d8 as their hit die, which means you're going to have about the average amount of hit points as most of the other classes here. I think that the vast majority of classes in 5th edition have a d8 as their hit die. So you're not super tanky, but you're also not the squishiest. You're kind of right in the middle there. You are proficient in light armor, which means you're going to be looking at like leather, studded leather, things like that. Although a couple of the subclasses, which we'll talk about in a little bit here, do give you access to medium and heavy armor. They've got an interesting little selection of weapons, all simple weapons, some hand crossbows, long swords, rapiers, short swords, things like that. And then you do get musical instruments. Again, I think the default template for bards is being a musician and using music as your focus for your magic, although I think the bard class really leans itself to that. Do not feel limited by music being your only outlet for magic. I've seen really cool bards function as like anthropologists or dancers or like painters or sculptors that sort of creates magic out of their unique art style. And Ciarenne, Per's character, is one of the probably the most brilliant example of a unique bard that I've ever seen. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. But again, they do give you the musical instruments. I would talk with your DM. Maybe you can flavor that as like a different tool proficiency or something like that to match that specific flavor of your character. But again, you're proficient in whatever you create your magic through, whatever art form. As far as saving throws, you are proficient in dexterity and charisma, which are both solid saves. And again, I'd like to remind you that typically when you're looking at primary stats, if you look to your saving throws, those are going to kind of indicate what stats you probably want to focus most on. We'll talk about that a little bit more in depth. And then for skill proficiencies, this is where bards really shine. Bards are one of two classes in 5th edition that get access to something called expertise, which again we'll go over a little bit as we scroll down here. But bards are the skill monkey class if there ever was one. You can be really niche and unique with your skill proficiencies, and bards have this tendency to just roll crazy high skill checks through all of their different abilities. Again, you're never the goal with a bard is no matter what you're rolling, you're never going to be terrible at it. And eventually you're going to be the best at it, which is really cool. Again, as far as equipment goes, you do get access to sword, basically bladed weapons, your musical instruments, and light armor. Um, Now, being a spell casting class, the primary role of your bard is going to be to use your spells um, to support your allies, sort of buff them up, while simultaneously controlling and debuffing your enemies. Bards themselves, um, not always necessarily the best damage dealers or striker type characters, but they really, really thrive when they're helping other classes do what they do, whether it's locking down enemies or buffing your allies through their magic. Charisma is your primary spellcasting stat, so again, charisma is going to be super, super important here for you. Um, and the Bard's spell list is pretty unique. You again, you do have access to a variety of different types of spells here. But again, I think a lot of the core bard spells are there's a little bit of healing magic in there. There's spells that again debilitate enemies and also boost up your allies there. So as you're learning and picking your spells as you go through the levels of bard, you really kind of want to focus on what is my role in this party and how can my magic help me accomplish what I'm going to try to do. Um, they are ritual casters too, which is really cool. So, being a ritual caster means that in non-combat situations, you can take a little bit of time and cast some of these spells with the ritual tag that can be used for a lot of utility purposes, which makes bards super, super useful to the party for solving problems outside of combat. Um, I'm going to turn it over to Jay Milio to talk about probably the most important bard class feature, bardic inspiration.
All right, thanks, Luke. So Bardic Inspiration, huge, huge, as Luke said, for the Bard class. What you can do is, using your bonus action on your turn, you can choose one creature other than yourself, so you cannot inspire yourself. They have to be within 60 feet of you, and they have to be able to hear you. That creature gains a Bardic Inspiration die, which starts off as a d6 and increases as your levels go up. What that means is within the next 10 minutes, so you can use this both in and out of combat, the creature can add a d6 to any roll that they have. So it could be an ability check, it could be an attack roll, it could be a saving throw. Anything that basically rolls a d20 in the game, they can add it onto. Um, they can also wait until after the d20 is rolled in order to say, I'd like to use my inspiration. You don't have to declare it at the beginning, but you do have to say it before the DM says whether you succeed or fail. So there's kind of like that little bit period, so you don't have a huge amount of time to decide, but you do have, you can see what your d20 does first. Once you roll it, it's lost until they give you another one. You can only have one stored up at a time, so bards, you're going to want to kind of spread it out amongst your team. And you can use this feature equal to a number of times of your charisma modifier. So that's why charisma, another reason why your charisma modifier is very important. That also determines the amount of bardic inspirations you have. So when you first start off this class, you do not regain your bardic inspirations until after you finish a long rest. Eventually, down the road, later levels, short rest, but to start it off, long rest. As I mentioned earlier, it'll also increase at higher levels, D8 at 5th level, and then so on and so forth as it goes up. Alrighty. And then once you hit level 2, there's a really cool thing, again, kind of digging into that skill, like they are the skill kings and queens of the D&D. Jack of all trades. With Jack of all trades, if you are not proficient on your skills, you actually end up adding half of your proficiency bonus rounded down. So even the skills that you're not great at, you are better at than the average player, just because you are a bard. Really, really cool feat there. And then you've got Song of Rest. So also at second level, you can basically during a short rest play a soothing tune. You can orate. You could read a poem. You can however you want to flavor it. Basically, during the short rest period, any creature, including yourself, that rolls a hit die can add an extra d6 to their hit die roll. So the bard would roll a d6, and then anybody can add that as long as they also roll one other hit die. This actually does increase as well once you get to higher levels, but it does start off at a d6. So now I'm going to kick it back over to Luke to talk about the different colleges of bards.
Sure. I think I'm going to jump to expertise real quick before we get into Bard colleges. But as I was alluding to earlier, and especially you can kind of see the themes playing into the mechanics here. At third level, you become an expert in two skills of your choice. Bards are one of two classes in D&D 5e that get access to expertise, the other one being rogues. But essentially, you can pick two skills that you double your proficiency bonus with. And this is how bards are able to roll these crazy high persuasion checks or stealth checks or acrobatics checks, things like that. These proficiencies tied in with your skill bonuses lead to some pretty crazy shenanigans. And again, depending on what flavor of bard or your specific character's backstory or their role within the party, you can get access and kind of really fill in those gaps to be the shining star, depending on the scenario here. At 10th level, you do get two more expertise skills for a total of four, which again is pretty wild. And by the time you're 10th level, between your spells and your skill proficiencies, there's very few problems that a bard can't solve. Um, Let's talk about Bard colleges. So at level 3, you're going to pick your subclass, which in 5th edition is represented by the colleges that your Bard went to train at. And again, these represent sort of a formal education, a formal skill set. Depending on the flavor and the type of Bard that you're trying to play, and again, that party role that you're trying to fill, Bards are one of the most versatile classes as to how they can function within that party dynamic. Some great examples of Bard subclasses. Actually, we're going to list a bunch of them really quickly. If you want to go for that like core full spell casting skill monkey support role, College of Lore is probably your best bet for that. It just makes bards better at barding, I think. College of Valor allows you to be a little bit more of a frontline melee fighter, using your bardic inspirations to buff your armor class, your weapon attacks, things like that. Gives you some extra armor proficiencies. College of Swords feels a little bit more light on their feet, a little bit more of like a rogue sort of vibe there. College of Whispers also really good for sort of the subterfuge, espionage, sort of sneaky vibes. Um, College of Glamour and College of Eloquence are both really awesome for sort of that rock star performance, persuasive, silver-tongued sort of feel there. And College of Creation is a really unique one where you can actually like use your artistic prowess to almost like spawn things into existence. So there's a lot of different directions, and you can use these different specializations or different subclasses to really key in on your specific bard, which is really cool. Um, at 4th level, you get the choice of an ability score improvement or a feat. So we're going to talk about both of those really quickly here. As we've mentioned before, charisma is the most important attribute stat for bards. Charisma is going to tie into how effective your spells are at being resisted, doing damage, but also affects the number of bardic inspiration dice that you have, and so it just makes you able to do more things and be better at the things that you're doing. Secondary stats would probably be Constitution. Obviously, you want to have hit points to survive and be good at those Constitution saving throws to make sure your spell slots aren't being broken. And then Dexterity is also important for boosting that armor class a little bit, and also some initiative rolls, some skill checks, and some weapon attacks there as well. As far as feats go, bards I would say are fairly feat agnostic, as in they function pretty well outside of, you don't necessarily need feats to make a bard super excellent. But if you are looking for feats, some of the recommendations that we have are Warcaster, again giving you advantage on those concentration checks, making sure your spells really count in the middle of the battle. Inspiring leaders, not only on top of your Song of Rest, you can also give your party temporary hit points on a short rest. Again, just tying into that utility and that out of combat prowess. Skill Expert ties even further into the Skill Monkey aspect here and giving you access to even more expertise, just widening your array of skills that you can roll crazy, crazy high on. And then Magic Adept is another one where if you feel that your spell list is a little bit limited, Magic Adept can help you grab a few key choice spells and cantrips just to give you maybe a little bit of a damaging output if you need it. So those are some really, really good ones to have. Um, at this point, we're going to turn it over to our special guest, Miss Inpurrgalatic, to talk about tips and tricks of playing a bard, maybe specific spell choices that stand out, and then what sort of magic items you want to be on the lookout for as you're playing your bard. So, Per, if you
Hi.
want to take it away.
Sure. So as a bard, I think um, the fact that you are basically a huge utility class is under rated. So just to make sure that you're picking spells that really play into that and help in every situation that you can think of. But in specific, I really like to also take advantage of the feat and grab a really strong cantrip for doing damage so that I have those utility spells in spell slots available because you don't know what you're going to need and what's coming ahead of you. Um, and then secondary, obviously, you really want to make full use of Vicious Mockery. It's just underrated in how it affects the party and helps the party, and people don't really always see the benefit out the gate, but your teammates will appreciate it. And then don't forget to make sure you're casting all of your inspiration. Sometimes you want to sandbag it because you don't know what's coming up, but um, that just ends up, meaning you kind of waste it sometimes, and you really don't want to go down without having used all that resources available to you. Um, as far as tips and tricks, I think that, just really banking on the charisma skills that you have are helpful to pick things like animal friendship or charm, stuff like that. You don't know what situations coming up that you might need that. So having those available to you is helpful. Um, and then for magic items, I would say that again, you're really playing into that utility. So things that are going to give you more spells, more access to things to really play to all your strengths is super helpful. So that's what I look for in a magic item typically is just overall utility. But aside from that, things that are not concentration, um, you really don't realize it, but how often you're going to be holding concentration on something that you can't drop and ultimately be unable to really take any other actions because your other spells are all concentration based too. So that always kind of is a management feature that I seem to find myself dealing with. And then last of all, I just think like make sure that you put your own flavor on it and have fun with it. You can definitely do a lot of really creative things with bards, so do what works for you. You don't have to play the stereotype of charm your pants off kind of bard. You can be anything you want to be and make it your own.
Yeah, and I just want to touch base on Ciarenne specifically because Ciarenne again is such a brilliant brilliant example of taking the bard class and flavoring it as something really really unique and beautiful and powerful too. Do you want to take like a quick minute and just kind of go over your inspiration or your sort of concept with Ciarenne? Because I think it serves as such an awesome example for sort of the really really unique things you can do with a bard.
Sure. Ciarán is very heavily a roleplay character. So I didn't necessarily take all the choices that would have been the most beneficial to a character in a party. I really wanted her to have the flavor that kind of went with it. So her backstory is kind of that she was raised in the College of Sylvanas as an orphan. So She's very in tune with the balance of nature, and that's like the primary important ideology for her. She really has more of a like druidic monk type personality than a bard personality, and so a lot of her flavor is animal based or plant based spells, and um, it really takes some effort to maybe pick that. Sometimes you have to pick items that kind of go into that, play into that, and also I took a lot of unique feats and stuff to try and pull in um, things that wouldn't necessarily be available to a bard. So I honestly think feats are maybe not necessary, but certainly a huge boon in like making your character the way that you want it to be and the way that you want it to play. So
Very, very cool. Um, Anything else, either Per or Jamilio, you guys want to mention on the Bard class before we wrap this video up?
No, I mean, definitely make it your own. As we always recommend, make sure you have open discussions with your DM if you want to kind of do anything that's a little bit outside the box to get their feedback and make sure it's good to play. But otherwise, just have a lot of fun with bards. They're great for one-liners, especially.
Absolutely. I always like to joke and say bards are the best class. They are so much fun. And if you're interested in playing a bard or any other class, as always, we always welcome new players to join our ongoing West Marches style campaign in the Tealeaf Adventuring Company every Thursday night on Twitch. So come check us out, say hi, and get involved. Until next time, this has been our TACtorial of So You Want to Play a Bard. Toodles.